Hey, welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. Today we're going to do a quick review of the Seeking Alpha stock information pages. If you're new to the channel or new to Seeking Alpha, this is a platform I use in almost all of my videos. And one of the ways that I support my channel is to do these little quick reviews on the Seeking Alpha platform. Try to show you some of the features that I like, features that I use all the time. And then if you're interested or you find it helpful, my affiliate link is in the description. It gives you 50% off 1 year of Seeking Alpha. You also get a free trial with that offer down below. And then if you do sign up, I receive a small commission and it helps keep the lights on over here on the 40 Finance channel. Now for today, we're going to use Apple stock as our example, and we're just going to focus on the features as they relate to Apple stock. So this is just one of thousands of stock pages you'll find in Seeking Alpha. There's also dozens more features that are available that I've covered in other videos, and I'll put some links down in the description as well. But for today, let's just look at our Apple stock page and see what kind of information Seeking Alpha offers. Okay, now right off the bat, one of the things that I probably use the most and I find super helpful is the Seeking Alpha news desk, as well as the article analysis. Now, the analysis comes from different authors. There are obviously plenty of different stock market platforms out there, and I think some of them get pigeonholed into one view on the same stock, whereas Seeking Alpha is more or less a community, and you have folks that write their own articles and opinions, and those people are typically financial advisors, stock research analysts, people who run their own firms and newsletters. They come on here to write about stocks. Obviously, they're trying to get some publicity for themselves, but oftentimes what you find in these analysis articles is they pick a hard side for a stock. It's very rare that you read an article that just, sits in the middle and doesn't pick a side, right? It's either buy Apple for this reason, sell Apple for this reason, so on and so forth. And you'll find some very interesting research things. So I'm just going to click on this article because it seems to talk about OS upgrades, new services, improved privacy features. And this is the kind of deep dive stuff that some of these folks do, where they break down product releases and they talk about how that might flow into the stock. And as I'm scrolling down here, you see the depth of this article, like how long this goes. And not everybody likes to read that long. I'm the kind of person who does typically enjoy it, but they threw so many new ideas in here, and eventually when you get to the bottom, you typically have a lot of commentary. And unlike some of the darker places on the web, I would say that most of the commentary, whether or not you care to look at it, it's pretty well informed, and they're going to challenge some of the statements that authors make in their articles, so it can be very interesting to view different viewpoints even on one article. Now, when you're a member of Seeking Alpha Premium, you get access to all of these articles, okay? If you're not a member, you still sign up for the site. You can access some of these features, but you'll run into a content wall after you click on a couple of the articles. All right, next, just so you know, the difference is the news articles. And these are more or less reporting facts and figures, right? But generally speaking, it's going to be stories like this. Apple, Google received letter from FCC Commission. The Seeking Alpha editors do a pretty good job of summarizing everything in relatively short order. And then if you have the premium service, one of the things that I use all the time is stuff like this on the news side. You can have it come through an email. You can also have a notification on the Seeking Alpha app. I prefer the email because what happens is when you're in premium, typically most of the meat of these news articles is printed right inside the email. So I don't need to even come to the site. I can read this headline. I can get the 3 or 4 sentences that I care about and move on. And of course, you have the opportunity from a notification standpoint to type in, which stocks you want to receive notifications from, which stocks you want to get app notification, email notification, and to be honest, it's an underrated time saver just to be able to read the news without having to go to a website and just get it right in your email. Now let's get into some of the deeper numbers that you get with Seeking Alpha. You see all these things off to the side, colors, grades. This is from the Quant formula. And you can scroll down and get a high-level view of a lot of this stuff. You see you have Wall Street analysts here. You have some tidbits coming out from bulls and bears. But if you really wanted to dig into these things on a much more detailed level, if we go over in the menu bar, we have our different ratings, right? So the quant rating is run by Seeking Alpha, and it's basically their algorithm on how they look at buy, sell, hold. And you can see that they've broken up their quant into factors, and that gives you some idea of why you get in this hold pattern right now, 3.38. 5 would be a high, 5 would be a strong buy, and 1 would be a sell. So in Seeking Alpha's algorithmic opinion, they're looking at valuation right now as D minus, growth is D plus, but profitability, momentum, and revisions all being positive. That's enough to combine to put you here at a hold at 3.38. And what's really cool, at least in my opinion, is you can break out the history as it's related to Apple across, 3 years, 6 months, however you want to do it. And they go down each day, and you get to see the price, and you get to see how the grade has changed. So look at valuation for a second. You were down in the Fs about a month ago, and if we go all the way back to, let's just go to December, you still had Fs on valuation, but you get a feel for how some of this has changed. So momentum got real strong right here in February for whatever reason. You could backtrack and look at the articles to figure out why. I don't know off the top of my head with Apple, but there is an element to back testing this in the sense that you can go back and align certain periods of history with the Seeking Alpha quant rating. Now, that's just the quant rating. Those analysis articles I talked about, each author has to put in their own rating for a stock when they're writing those articles. So you start to see, this is a nice little breakdown. 18 authors have written about Apple over the past 30 days. You got 1 strong buy, 5 buys, etc., etc. And just like the quant score, you can come in here and take a look at how the rating has changed over time. And then if you have somebody, let's just say that you enjoy reading about Apple, let's pretend it's this outsider author, you can see how their rating has changed over time. So maybe you want to double check, like, hey, didn't this guy say buy this thing 6 months ago in his article and now he's backing off of it? You can actually go in here and take a look to see if their words are matching their actions. All right, lastly, I tend to follow mostly Wall Street analysts myself. So if you're into that game, like I am, you can see how they have broken down. Theirs expands out a little bit more to 90 days, but same thing. You get a feel for how it's been tracking over time. You can break it out on the different price targets. So they do the high, the average, and the low. And then you get to see down here, I think this graph is kind of cool. Let's break it up into 1 year here. So the orange line is price target, consensus price targets from analysts, right? And how Apple stock has reacted against the price target. So very interesting to look at. Then when you come down here, I usually use this bar chart. You get a feel for how strong the recommendations are, right? So in this case, it looks like Apple has a lot of dark green bars. So they've gotten strong buys for a very long time. In fact, if anything, despite the recession fears and stuff we have now, I would say that the strong buys, just eyeballing it, have gotten a little bit better. Then you look at it at strong sells, and those have diminished over time. So very interesting to see that. And again, it took us 3 seconds. We didn't have to dig through a bunch of data. We could just kind of eyeball it and get a feel about the momentum. All right, next up, let's look at the Financials tab, which has some really great long-term information. There's a couple ways to do it. Right now, I'm stacked on an annual period. And the one thing I don't like is I wish they would put the latest on the left, so they were sort of looking backwards this way, but that's easily changed here with this menu option. And one simple feature here that I find, sort of useful, particularly when you're looking at all these numbers, is they do a bar chart for each category that shows you how it's grown or dropped over time. So this one here is revenues, and then let's see if we can find EPS. So they have revenue per share. You see how that's grown over time, and you have your basic EPS. And then I look at this one quite a bit, and Apple's a good example, average shares outstanding over time. So how have buybacks been going? We know Apple's huge in buybacks, but you just hover over this chart, and you can see how much the share count has actually come down over time. So those are some examples of what you'll find in the financials section. You also have balance sheet, cash flow, sort of sub-menus within here. The next one I use a lot here is the earnings tab, and they give you all of the most important information right on the default page, so you can see the latest quarter's earnings, so you don't have to go backtrack into news articles and figure out, did they beat it, how did it work, how was the revenue, it's all right here. And then they stack up this quarter, so the upcoming earnings call, what is the expectation? So the estimate is $1.15. How have the revisions gone over the past 90 days? You see here with Apple, you're down 25 on EPS revisions and up 3 over the last 90 days. But you see here, this is for the fiscal year. So sometimes we get too enamored, with a quarterly report. And you have to start breaking things up by fiscal year. At least I do, because I'm a long-term investor. So you come down here and look at the chart from a fiscal year standpoint, how many revisions have been up and how many have been down, and how's that compared to the sector and to the 5-year average. Then you can see down here, this is EPS surprise and estimates by quarter. Goes back a few quarters and gives you some idea just by looking at things. Hey, did they beat fiscal quarter 3, 2021? Okay, they did. They hit $1.30. And then what are people expecting for this fiscal quarter? Very easy to see, $1.15, which is actually less than they hit last year. Now, a lot of those data points are kind of in the past. I tend to spend most of my time here on earnings estimates, trying to get a feel for how do the projected revenue and EPS numbers look across future time, right? So trying to get an idea of will this stock, will the P ratio, price to sales, whatever your metric is that going down? Right? So you want it to go down to insinuate a better value. So let's take a look with Apple. And they do this on the quarterly view, but I focus on the annual view. Like I said, always looking for the next fiscal year to see how things go. And while you do have this nice chart, I do find this just as easy to read here in the table view. So fiscal year ending September of 2022, right now you have an EPS consensus estimate of $6.14 for the year, okay? And this is cool, in my opinion. Right off the bat, it shows you, is that up or down from the year before, which is so important coming off of the COVID boom, right? Because some companies that were doing really well are going backwards. That's not the case here with Apple, plus 9.5% on the EPS, at least from a projection. And if they were to hit that number, Seeking Alpha tells you, based on today's price, what the forward PE would land at. So super helpful. And then, at least from an eyeball standpoint, you see here, Apple has 42 analysts. That's where they derive this number from. Here's your high and low to give you your own idea of how this is spanning, and just kind of like qualifies this estimate a little bit, right? Is this one estimate from a random person? No, in this case, there's 42 people coming in, and you have a range, a high-low range, so that you can make your own adjustment if needed. And they do the same thing on the revenue side. right? So again, this is an interesting spot check coming out of the stay-at-home era, if you will. You got Apple fiscal year 2022, revenue estimate 393 billion. Yes, that will be growth this year, 7.68%. And look at this, you're already looking ahead to September of 2023. When that fiscal year ends, you get some calculation of how that's trending from the analysts. And once again, you can eyeball your forward price to sales. So if that's the metric that you like to follow, I kind of use it as more of a curiosity tool. But Seeking Alpha does the math for you, and you can kind of figure out, well, in regards to this price of 137 and a forward price to sales of 5.72, what does it mean? Is that good compared to the sector? I'm also looking at, let's just say, Microsoft and Amazon. How does that stack up? Does it hit your value points? A lot of that math's already done for you. All right, coming up here, a couple other things that I tend to look at is this valuation chart, which compares to their sector median and also the Apple or any stocks like 5-year average. And this stacks up pretty well. They do grades for this. And just there previously, I was talking about P ratio, price to sales. There's a lot of people that get into much deeper numbers than that, which I can understand. So if you're into PEG ratio forward, EV sales forward, price to book, even price to cash flow, right? So price to cash flow is something that's picked up quite a bit here during the pandemic era valuation. So I'm not sure if that's good or not, but a lot more people talking price to cash flow. You get trailing 12 months. You also get a forward view, and you get to compare that to the sector as well as to Apple's 5-year average. All right, same thing for growth. Same kind of chart, a lot of different ways to look at it. And then the last thing I'm going to show you here, well, here's profitability, but it's very similar. It just breaks up profitability into several more categories, depending on which metrics you like to follow. All right, now the last thing I want to show, though, is this cool little peer chart that breaks stuff out. And you can edit these, so I'm actually going to do that. Let's take out Dell, HP, Canon. These are sort of just form filled out. So you can come in here and say Microsoft. And just for fun, even though they're not really the same company, let's add Google to it. But you can do, anything. If I want to do Palantir, I think I could add them to it. Yep, right here. I'm not going to do that because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But here we go. We're going to compare. And then everything we just looked at for Apple that I went through on that stock page, just about everything except for the articles, the news and analysis articles, stacked right up here against Microsoft and Google. The Quant Ratings, factor grades, trading levels, total return, dividends, the valuation chart we just looked at, it's right here against the competitors. Growth, same thing, profitability, ownership. You get the idea. Very, very easy way to come in here and stack a couple stocks against each other and kind of test your own hypothesis, right? Is Apple a better deal than Microsoft? The numbers don't always tell the full story because if you have product launches and stuff coming out, but you could certainly do the number crunching right here on the screen. All right, and one last thing I want to show you for those of you who are big on charts and chart information. If you just hit this advanced chart feature, you get all the stuff by TradingView, everything that they offer, they pour into here. So let's just say we want to throw in RSI. You can see how that just gets added right here to the bottom. And then if you're focused, solely on that, you can actually maximize. So bottom line, if you're interested in charts, yes, they have a lot of chart features and you can play around with that in your free trial. All right, guys, so that is a single stock page view for Apple stock in Seeking Alpha Premium. If you have any questions about the platform, leave them in the comments below. I generally respond to everybody within a day or so. And if you found this review helpful, help me out. Use my affiliate link down there. You get 50% off your first year. You get a free trial. It's a type of trial where you put your credit card information into the account, and then if you don't cancel by 12 or 14 days or whatever it is, then they charge you the 50% off price. So don't want anyone to get fooled by that. But you can certainly get in it for a few days with more than enough time to cancel if you absolutely hate it. But I got to tell you, it's changed everything about the way that I look at stocks, and it saves me hours and hours of time. And frankly, I'm more informed than I've ever been on the stocks I follow because the depth of the news and analysis that comes through. All right, thanks everybody for watching. Hope you're having a great day. We'll see you on the next video.